Good evening, you guys. It's your boy Bill Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. I'm just gonna go straight to the point here, guys. Unfortunately, we got some sad news. Um, Yesterday during Blue Blood Sports TV's live stream, unfortunately, we received the sad news of the passing of Curtis Anderson, nicknamed Kurt Sugar. Um, he was pretty much one of the most valuable people in the LDBC, and I've had the pleasure of speaking with them behind the scenes, and being with them in a lot of the live streams that he's been around, and it's a really hard one. I had a chance to look at several live streams throughout the whole day today, during my day at work, and I'll tell you what, man. Curtis Anderson was a free spirit that loved life, but also he loved to share knowledge. And when it came to boxing and when it came to sports, I mean, his knowledge was just amazing. I got to know Curtis Anderson through the old World Breaker channel when he was on years ago, and lots of people were tuning into that channel not just to listen to the main host, but to listen to Curtis Anderson, because his knowledge on just boxing, music, movies, sports, world history, anything you want to talk about. I mean, he could talk about it for hours, or even days or weeks on end. I mean, his knowledge is unbelievable, and I had the pleasure of getting to know him personally. Through some of my some phone calls behind the scenes, and we would talk about basketball nonstop. And I can remember a time in 2020 when, in the aftermath of Kobe Bryant said how it shocked the entire world, and I remember immediately calling to Curtis Anderson afterwards because he basically lives in the New Jersey area, and he would talk about stories about him watching Kobe Bryant, you know, in high school when he was a young kid growing up in Philadelphia, and just watching that kid play from as a young teenager into the Hall of Famer that he became. I mean, his stories was just off the charts. He would even talk about stories about him going to Rucker Park and seeing some of the great legends that played in that recreational park. Guys like Kareem, guys like KD. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, his knowledge of basketball was just amazing. The only regret I have is that I didn't do enough, collaborations or enough live streams with him on my channel. And, it's a bit of a downer though, because at the end of the day, man, the man was a free spirited. And the most valuable thing about Curtis Anderson and what he brought was is that he was not just a free spirit alone. He was a very caring person that really tried to do his best to try to help people that were in desperate need. And I really enjoyed that about him most personally. And it would have been easier for me to try to, say, hey, let's collaborate together and do something. But I didn't want to do that because his contribution and his value, not not just to the boxing community, but the entire YouTube community was that he was a guy that had a wealth of knowledge, and he was willing to share it with anyone that's willing to listen. And I always enjoyed listening to the Three Wise Men of Boxing by the Stormy B Man channel. Salute to him and Scrapbook Boxing. And these guys, their knowledge and their intellect on boxing and the great conversations they had together was just unbelievable. I could spend hours on end looking through the archives and just listening to their perspective on boxing and hearing a lot of their perspectives about historical fights. And I could tell you something right now. Curtis Anderson should have been part of the International Boxing Hall of Fame because not only his intellect would have been so critical into analyzing boxing, but I bet you one thing. He would have basically destroyed a lot of those people and those committees that are in those places right now because his knowledge, and not just his knowledge alone, but his critique on boxing would have been so critical into cleaning up a lot of the issues that's been going on in boxing over the past decade. I remember that he talked about his favorite fighter was Sugar Ray Leonard, and I could remember talking about fantasy matchups with him against Floyd Mayweather, and he always felt that Sugar Ray Leonard would be the one guy to beat Floyd Mayweather, and he would critique it and basically break it down into a fine science, and I just was just amazed by his knowledge. And I had some some discussions about him, you know, behind the scenes with him, man. And he was a guy that it was a caring person, even through all the health issues that he went through in his life. He never wavered the opportunity to be a part. A lot of the live streams with Blue Blood Sports TV. I know he did some with Fanon back then, with 78. With Stormy B Man, as well as I mentioned. He was a guy that really showed his feelings, and he really cared for a lot of people, man. And this one's gonna hurt. This one's gonna definitely hurt because he should be alive, you know, living his life right now to the best. But I can pretty much say without hesitation that right now he's in a far better place, and he's basically, enjoying more boxing with all the great, boxers that he watched as a youngster, especially during that time. Another thing I've also forgot to mention too, he loved watching baseball as well. And I can remember him discussing about the 1977 New York Yankees, that team that won the World Series with Reggie Jackson and Billy Martin, who pretty much hated each other back then. And that whole time in '77 with the murders and the was it Zodiac killer or something? I don't remember. If anyone from New York can remind me of that, I would appreciate it. And then that infamous blackout that pretty much knocked out all the entire electricity. I mean, it was a crazy year in '77. But through all of that, the Yankees were able to, come together as a unit and win the World Series. And Curtis would talk about that whole 77 years, probably one of the most craziest years in the New Jersey and New York area. And it was just amazing to watch. I just sat back and just listened to him speak. And as anyone would tell you, when a person with that kind of knowledge speaks, you just sit back and you listen. And that's what I try to do. Anytime Curtis Anderson went on live with some of the people on different channels, or basically when he wanted to call you and talk to you, and at the end of the day, man, he was a great man that really did a lot for the LDBC community and for the boxing community as well. And there's no doubt in my mind that there's nobody that's going to replace what he was able to do. And I think that his biggest, contribution more than anything was that he was a guy that really cared for people so much. And sometimes a bit to a fault, but the thing with him is that he had a pot of gold that, and he was willing to to share it around with people that really wanted to have that huge knowledge of his. And his knowledge on, as I mentioned, with boxing, with sports, with music, movies, whatever you want to talk about, his knowledge it was amazing. It was off the chain. And he will be missed. And there's no one that could ever replace what he was able to do. But the best part is that we have all the videos and all the archives from various channels that we can look back and just, listen in, because he was a guy that really was a man that really knew his stuff. So from my channel and through all the other channels in the LDBC and through the new media movement and everyone else. Thank you, Curtis Sugar, for everything you've done for us. Condolences to his wife and to his oldest daughter living out in New Jersey right now as they're going through the grieving process of losing their respected human being of Curtis Anderson. And the best thing we could do at this point is to celebrate his life and celebrate all the memories that we had together and all the good conversations and all the laughs that we had together. And at the end of the day, man, there was nobody that did it better than Curtis Anderson. And he was going through a lot of health problems, and he took the opportunity to, come in, show us love, even in the chats, and even also during live streams. He was always a guy that really cared for people. So it's going to be hard to replace a man like that. And I'm really gonna miss the phone conversations I had with him. So, but rest in peace, Curtis Anderson. He was a great human being, and his presence in this YouTube community will definitely be missed. You know what I'm saying? So as we say goodnight, thank you, Curtis Anderson, for all the memories, and your presence will be definitely missed. Rest in peace.